Welcome to your Wednesday edition of Forecast Lab. We've got a few clouds out there, but it is hot, and this is bad even for Texas standards. We've got like 97 over 71. You can see it on the map here. Got some heat there around Dallas and Waco, and as you go further north, hundreds in Kansas. And finally, when you get further up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, we've got this fresh polar front. Quite a burst of cold air coming back through there. However, still trying to cool down from these 80s and 90s in the Dakotas. In the southwestern U.S., the southwest monsoon is still going on, 92 over 68 there at Phoenix. We'll take a look at the satellite to see if that translates into precip or not. Quite often it does, but not always when you have a ridge overhead. And in the eastern U.S., we've got a lot of tropical air coming northward. There it is, all the way up into the Great Lakes in Quebec and Ontario, and even up there in Quebec, it's up in the 80s with dew points in the 70s. And of course, that means it's going to be a warm night for many places in the Northeast. These are the forecast lows tonight. The gray stations are coming within about 4 degrees of the record for the date. The white stations are tying the record for the date, and the red ones are exceeding it, setting a new record. So obviously it's going to be very warm up in New York, Binghamton there with 71, and Windsor Locks, 76 in Connecticut, breaking the record set in 1905. And this pretty much outlines the plume of tropical air coming northward, and I don't have the data for Canada, but very likely records are being set up there also. And also the northwestern U.S., records being set for overnight lows, all the way from the Willamette Valley into the deserts. Here's what we're looking at for high temperatures tomorrow. Washington, D.C. expected to come up to about 100, and mid-90s for the Hudson Valley. And out there in Portland, coming up to 105 at Hillsboro and 104 at Yakima. There's a closer look at those records for tomorrow from Portland all the way up to Olympia. We're going to see anywhere from 97 to 105, breaking records for the date. And it will continue into Friday. There's the readings for Friday. We will be setting new records from Burns all the way up towards Seattle. You can see 95 up there. And even in the high deserts of Nevada, coming up to 100 once again at Winnemucca, and close to that at Elko. So when this happens, we start looking very closely at the mid-level patterns. This is a 500 millibar chart, very useful for August. And what we see here is the typical subtropical high centered off of North Carolina, and the ridge, very important, extending westward across Texas. So no wonder the weather is so yucky out here. And then we pick up another segment of the ridge from Nevada up to this closed center 594 decameter upper level high across Washington, and that's going to be shoving its way into the west coast there. Not wanted, but we're going to get it. And let's see that come together. You can see that 594 decameter high making its appearance by Friday over Oregon. It's already hot there to begin with, so it's just going to add more fuel to the fire. And then the 594 decameter high off of North Carolina also moving a little bit inland, but we shouldn't see as many effects from that. And then we can see up north there's a very strong westerly fetch. Broad jet stream, polar front jet up there, definitely not a split flow pattern. That's, well, I mean, you probably could break this into two segments, but overall, yeah, this band up here is up there all by itself, doing its thing and keeping the weather in Canada pretty turbulent and ever-changing. Going into the weekend, we see the 597 decameter contour start showing up, so that points to very hot weather in Utah and western Colorado. And this whole thing here, that's a big old dome. A little bit of relief there in Washington and Oregon as the southwesterly flow opens up, but not so much for the Intermountain region and Rockies. And then the overall trend going into next week, not really much change, but the high does move out into the Denver and High Plains area. So it looks like that heat wave will just kind of saunter its way eastward very slowly. And the subtropical high in the southeastern U.S. not doing very much. Pretty good trough coming into the northwestern U.S. by midweek that grazes the North Plains and heads up into Canada, so not much relief in the U.S. itself. And in fact, this ridge gets established all the way from the Rockies up to Minnesota, so it looks like some of that hot weather is going to be translating northeast into the Great Lakes area. And looks like maybe below normal temperatures for the Midwest, where we have this troughing. That's evidence of some rain, clouds, and maybe a cooler air mass in that region. Some of it may be coming from Quebec, undercutting the mid-level troughing there, but some of it could be from convection in that region. And let's see what happens after that. Not much to talk about, and then I'm going to run this all the way back, and we're going to look at the troughs. Okay, so we open up with westerly flow. Not much to say about that, but then somewhere in here, yeah, one good trough moving through New York. If there's enough humidity, dew point, we could see some good storms up there around Friday or Saturday. Depends on the return moisture. But yeah, there it is right there. Some sort of trough around the weekend around Iowa, and that thing just kind of drops in and spins around. Some unstable weather there in the Midwest. And then it kind of eases down into Missouri and Tennessee. And then it gradually gets picked up by the increase in westerly flow up in Canada and carried up into the northeastern U.S. by the following weekend, the 22nd. And about that time, we've got this high set over the Gulf Coast region, so continuation of very hot weather for the south. A look at the National Hurricane Center shows Tropical Storm Fred there. Things are getting active once again. Tropical Storm Fred up to 35 knots, sustained winds. With central pressure, a rather high 1007 millibars. We can see it's moving west-northwest at 13 knots. And we'll just look at the track on that. Yeah, that's been a very consistent track. I believe last week we were kind of looking for that same projection. So I don't really see any reason to deviate from that. And we can see that along the length of that, it's not really expected to get into hurricane strength. There's how it looks on the visible satellite imagery. Got Haiti over here in the Dominican Republic on the other side of the island. And right over here, there's old Fred. A little bit of a dry slot working into the back side of that. And on the other side, kind of a comma appearance. And you're going to see that build as we get some of that afternoon heating. See those towers going up over the landmass, and it looks like the circulation is kind of disrupted a little bit. Less organized, but still some hot towers in there. Let me show you the infrared. This is a better way to assess the storm. We start out around daybreak. And you can see some increase in activity there as those towers start blowing up, get into those darker black shades. However, it is still disorganized at this time. A lot of landmass interaction there. And there's the latest update. We can see that it is over the landmass itself, right there over the mountainous areas. So probably later tonight or tomorrow morning, we should see it emerge out over the waters and maybe start to reorganize once again. And then just a quick look at Alaska and northern Canada. We've got this very strong low in western Hudson Bay region. This is an occluded low, so this should start dying out and moving up into Baffin Island. However, out ahead of it, we've got this plume of warm air. We discussed that a few minutes ago, and we can see we've even got 82 near the shores of James Bay and 70s all the way up into northern Quebec. Now, you notice we don't have those 80s out at Goose Bay. That's due to the influence of that departing high-pressure area, but certainly the plume of warm air heading its way up into northern Quebec and overrunning the front in this area right here, producing widespread rain and a few showers. And then checking out Alaska really quick. Mild conditions, 50s and mid-60s. However, they're starting to come under the influence of this warm air advection coming in from the Gulf of Alaska. So I would expect to see conditions deteriorate a little bit and also warm as we go into tomorrow. Also a possible heat record today for Europe. This would be an all-time record for the entire continent. 120 degrees reported at Sicily at a station called Syracuse, and that would break the record of 118, which was set in Greece in July 1977. It's also been reported that Tunis, which is the capital of Tunisia, got up to 120, and 123 was reported inland in that desert area. Now on Forecast Lab, we don't like to take the data at face value. We like to take a look at the actual maps. And what we see here on the east coast of Sicily, 111 at Catania. And this was at 11Z. This is kind of early in the day because they picked up a sea breeze which relieved some of that heat. But apparently, Syracuse kept going up. And as far as Tunis, I took a look and that record was set yesterday. They only got up to about 108 for today's high temperature. And let me see if I can zoom in on Sicily and get additional plots. No, not really. That was part of the synoptic network where they got that report. But inland, one little station here coming up to 111 at Sigonella. Yeah, that's a military facility. When I was down in Kenya, working Operation Support Hope, our C-5s and C-141s flew into Sigonella quite often. They used to call that place SIG. Let's bring things closer to home and check out the southwest monsoon, looking at Arizona and New Mexico. This is yesterday morning around 10, 11 a.m. There's some convective debris north of Tucson, and that's being carried northwest by the prevailing flow. And then we get the afternoon warm-up and stuff starts forming around Seligman and Prescott. That appears to be propagating rapidly to the southwest. Again, this is yesterday. And by evening, we've got new development around Ajo. Let's see what happens with that. Let me slow that down just a little bit. Okay, yeah, storms moving out into Casa Grande and dying off, not quite reaching Phoenix. And storms also out near Yuma, so this is definitely in the lower valleys. So I would certainly say the monsoon is still going on. Some activity over Tucson last night during the overnight hours. And I used to live in Tucson. I kind of miss those summer nights where you'd have storms going at midnight, 1 a.m. Nothing like it. And yeah, there we go. Going into the early daytime hours, not much going on. We pull up the heating for today, and let's see what happens. Storms over the, well, not really much of any storms up north. The Mogollon Rim looking pretty quiet, but down around Douglas, Nogales, Bisbee. Yep, storms going up there, and also around Yuma. So it really looks like kind of the luck of the draw. Some people getting storms and some aren't. Let's check this out on the visible. There's where we're at right now, and yeah, very ominously quiet on the Mogollon Rim. But let's go back to this morning. That's how things looked. Kind of wonder if maybe some of that debris and maybe some mid-level warmth associated with the latent heat drifted over the mountains and maybe kind of suppressed things, kind of capped it. That's kind of what I'm thinking there. And as the day goes on, there's our storm initiation, some good towers out around Yuma, and lots of towers out in the mountains near Douglas and Nogales. And that's where we're at right now. And plenty of storms also in New Mexico, and that's about it. Looking at Nevada and California, you can see the affinity for the higher elevations. Storms going up in the mountains of Lake Charleston, the Sheep Mountains, north of Las Vegas, and up and down the Sierra Nevadas. Not the Sierra Madres, that's quite a ways away. And that's how things look right there. Let's check in on the wildfires. Well, I'm not a fire expert, but kind of looks like there's been some improvement over the past few days. So that's good news. The smoke looks like a lot of it being carried out to sea for today. And last but not least, SPC has an enhanced risk for Wisconsin, the Chicago area, and Michigan. And we got to remember, this time of year, this is derecho season. I'm not saying that's what's happening, nothing like that, but that's the kind of thing we have to be on guard for, because the weather up there can be very turbulent this time of year. And we can see we've already got a tornado watch box out there for, yeah, that's it right there, Green Bay, all the way down through Madison, down towards the southwestern part of the state. The SPC outlook definitely indicating tornado potential as these develop due to the high instability and favorable shear. And then as it evolves, we're going to get these swaths of damaging wind, so that indicates bow echoes, outflow, interaction, and that kind of thing. There's how it looked earlier in the day. You can see those towers up there in western, or should say central Wisconsin, and the development looked like this. Additional cells going up in extreme northwestern Illinois and adjoining areas of Iowa and Wisconsin, and those will probably continue moving eastward. There they are on the high-resolution rapid refresh. We'll check out the storm environment by pulling up a model proximity sounding. And what do we see here? Yeah, look at that 0 through 1 kilometer shear. The storm motion vector out here, and that sweeps out a pretty large area. And you can see the SRH up around 100 to 250, depending on what layer you take. Cape, pretty high. And the moisture actually looks pretty good. I mean, not very good if you're trying to avoid severe weather, but for favorable severe weather, that's what we need to see. The LCLs, a reflection of that, a reflection of the averaged low-layer moisture, relative humidity, and that's running about 0.5 to 1.2 kilometers, which is definitely going to be within what we need for tornadoes. A tornado environment LCL, that tends to be pretty important, and once it starts going above 1.5 to 2.0, the probability of tornadoes rapidly diminishes. And D-Cape, yeah, that's getting up into derecho territory. So if this line can maintain itself, that would be certainly favorable for severe weather. And it looks like the downshear Corfiti vector is not super high, but it is eastward at about 50 to 55 knots. So if it can continue sustaining itself, that could point to a derecho possibility across Lake Michigan into Michigan itself and maybe even northern Indiana. And this is the evolution of those cells, yeah, rapidly moving into southwestern Michigan and a few more clusters coming into Chicago around 10 to 11 p.m. And then after that, MCS and at least some beneficial rains for the Corn Belt in that region. And you can kind of make out a front also, kind of like that. So, yeah, those are probably taking place along that front. Okay, and I think that'll do it for this edition of Forecast Lab. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see everybody here once again on Friday. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to tell your friends about it. And if you get a chance, either support us on Patreon or pick up a book or some software. Weathergraphics.com, that's going to be the place you want to go for that. Either of those will help support the stream. And we'll talk to you on Friday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.